in the past year, I think we have all been a little bit too accustomed to our own culture due to COVID, as we haven't been able to go out and experience any other cultures. So for my interpersonal communications project, I am out in LA today. I'm going to be visiting Olivera Street to indulge in the Hispanic culture, and then I will be visiting a Taoist temple to experience an Asian culture. And I think that I will be experiencing a little bit more of a culture shock with the Taoist temple. I think I'm just a little bit less familiar with Asian culture than I am with Mexican culture. So come along with me and enjoy this experience with me.
Starting at Olivera Street was a great start to the day, though my prediction was right and I did not experience much of a culture shock. Probably because 33.7 million Hispanics of Mexican origin do reside in the United States, or 1/10 of the US population. One thing very distinct about Hispanic heritage is their tendency to dance, which is in fact an essential ritual in Mexican culture. By engaging with this culture through dance, I felt a high context culture pattern. There was no meaning dependent on context, but meaning dependent on nonverbal communication. One thing very distinct about this culture is that architecture is very important in the Chinese way of life. Altars of worship such as this temple represent heaven and higher lords. In this case, this temple is dedicated to the Taoist goddess of the sea and patron to the sailors. Right when I walked in, I immediately felt uncomfortable and somewhat out of place. I was hoping somebody would come up and offer assistance or guide me through the steps to take, though nobody did. I then engaged with a lady who seemed to know what she was doing, and she lent some assistance. The Chinese culture displays a nonverbal and non-aggressive communication behavior. Along with a language and accent barrier, other nonverbal behaviors I observed included standing moderately far apart from each other while speaking, avoiding eye contact, and most importantly, being less demonstrative, as I was still confused after speaking to her. Chinese heritage does imply non-aggressive communication, so it was important to not get frustrated and to communicate successfully through nonverbal observation.
Now, this seemed to be the biggest challenge that I personally faced. The Chinese culture highlights the importance of in-group social stability through different communication protocols. Instead of using precise language or low-context communication like the US, the Chinese will be indirect or vague, which left me unsure of how to act and ultimately not sure what to do inside the temple.
In an effort to connect with the culture, I decided to participate in a ritual where I lit 11 incense and placed them among the emperor's shrines within the temple. This demonstrated the Chinese fundamental value of societal hierarchy. This widespread use of ritual demonstrates respect as the smoke of the incense is sent up to the heavens. Along with personal relations to higher lords, the Chinese historically rely on each other rather than relying on existing societal infrastructure like we do in the United States. This makes China a collectivistic-oriented structure. At the temple, I also noticed that two of the workers had the same last name, one being older and one being younger. They seemed to be mother and daughter. This made perfect sense as the Chinese culture demonstrates reliance on personal relations. Unlike the US, it is common for Chinese companies to hire family members or a small group of known individuals.
The Chinese culture has countless strong and weak suits that are all influenced by face. Face or face work in the Chinese culture looks a little bit different than it does in the United States. In a collectivistic culture, extreme politeness and positive interpersonal relations are important aspects of face, and some admirable traits the Chinese culture does prevail. Some weaknesses that I noticed was the vague instructions when presented with the question, but perhaps this just seems like a weakness to me because I am accustomed to a low-context society. A co-culture of my own that I can compare the Chinese culture with would be the work culture. Working in a restaurant, I am constantly presented with people who come off very ungrateful and very rude. I admire how the Chinese are overly polite, and I believe that some Americans, especially in the workplace, would benefit from being more respectful and polite to one another. I believe these communication behaviors do need to change, and they should cater a bit more to the way that the Chinese do it.